Hi everybody, thanks for coming back. Welcome to Ellis Creates. I want to spend today and a couple more videos telling you about how to create a children's book story. So I wanted to create this series to take you from start to finish, from idea all the way to published book, because I've done it 3 times and I wanted to help you create your own children's book. This video will guide you through brainstorming, structuring your plot, as well as developing characters that kids will love. Tip number 1 is, where do the ideas come from? Now, for many of you, you may have a children's book that has been dear to your heart, that you've wanted to write, and I run into a lot of people. People will tell me they get inspired to see me as an author, as an illustrator. They will come to me with their stories, and it's really exciting. And if you have one, share it below in the comments and tell us what's on your heart, what you want to put out into the world. My first book, even though I had graduated from the Savannah College of Art and Design, it took me quite a while to get that first book out, and I talk about that in my very first video, so you can look back at that one. My personal experience of losing a child, I didn't find any books out there for 2-year-olds. And that's how old my son was. Most of the books that they had given me at the hospital or well-meaning friends had given me, they were for much older children. They were very long. They really didn't explain things to him. And I found that there was no book, so I wrote it. And I wrote this, my story, Butterflies for Rory. I randomly woke up in the middle of the night. I had a piece of paper, and I still have it, this little blue piece of paper that I literally wrote the whole story out from. I feel like God woke me up and told me this story, and it's a very, very simple story. I think I changed like 2 or 3 words, which in a manuscript, that's not a lot, but the story was already written. It just came from my heart. So that first story obviously came to me, and it came from a personal experience. So if you have something that you've lived through, like you have a child that's autistic, you might have a parent who has Alzheimer's and you've been a caretaker. You might love to hike. I know I have a friend who was talking about all of the different national parks that he's been to, and I'm like, what a great book. I'd love to read that book. And so that might be a jumping point to figuring out what you want to write about. I just had a video come out about brainstorming. You might think, okay, let's just talk about nature. Let's talk about butterflies. And then perhaps you write a story from the butterfly's point of view, or from the caterpillar's point of view before it becomes a butterfly. Step number 2 is to take those ideas and create a compelling plot. You can use a 3-act structure where you'd start with beginning, middle, and end. So a lot of times you'll have one character that you're dealing with. What is their struggle? What is the hardship that they're going through? Like for me, for Butterflies for Rory, the hardship that was from my son's point of view, who was 2, was that he was so excited about meeting his sister. So it's building anticipation. But of course, what was the problem that he ran into? His sister didn't come home. And so how does he deal with that struggle? So the same thing goes with my latest book, which is On Young Korea. It was based on, it's basically an autobiography, but how did I deal with being a young girl who was Korean American, who had parents that didn't look like her, and was trying to find her identity? So what did I do about that? So you've got the beginning, my upbringing, and my questions about myself, and then what was I going to do with that, and then how did I resolve that problem? Now, of course, there can be other things that are happening, other sub-stories. I'm sure there's quite a lot more complexity to that if you were an English major, but just to get to the point for your children's story is beginning, middle, and end. So once you have your idea, then you have to create a plot. There's John Clayson, I don't know if I say his name right, but the kids and I, we have always loved one of his books called Where's My Hat? And it's a story about a character trying to find his hat. Seems like a simple plot, but it's a very beautiful book, and it's a very funny book, and It's very intriguing, and if you're a child, you want to know, well, where is his hat, and what did happen to his hat, and who has his hat? So think about that. What is going to elicit curiosity in your reader? And just because your reader is a little person doesn't mean that they're going to not want something complex in a certain way. Something that's going to pique their curiosity to say, okay, how does this end? I want to know. Tip number 3 is to create relatable characters. Create characters that you care about, that your reader will care about. For example, in my second book, Zach's Family, the story is from my son, and he was from a blended family. So I had 3 children, my husband had 3 children, and yet we came together, we got married, and then he was born. Instead of making them people, I made my characters giraffes. Why? Because I wanted to show the diversity of our family. Not only did we look different, but we had a different lifestyle, and I point that out in the book. So my husband's lifestyle was one of public school and a working dad. On my side, it was homeschooling and a mom who semi-stayed at home, had her own business, and it was very different. And so how did this kind of Brady Bunch, how did we join together? How does that make up Zach and who he is and how he relates to this blended family? So if children are reading that and they have siblings and they have sibling fights and how do they get along with each other, they're very relatable to other children. They can see the characters in my book and they can really relate to some of the things that are happening. So tip number 4 is to add a theme or a message. A theme can add depth to your story. There was a simple theme that I had for Butterflies for Rory, especially since it was written for a very young crowd, 2 to 5, 2 to 7. So we started off in the fall, and then we came around to winter, and then we see the character in spring. It shows the progression of time for a young child to understand in a very simple way. In my 3rd book, On Young Korea, the theme of just rediscovering your roots, for me as a Korean American, I have two videos on being Korean American and finding my way home to my mom, and again saying goodbye to her, or I will soon have another video. It can be difficult as a Korean American, especially being adopted internationally, also being of a different race than your parents that your adoptive family is. And so for me, Annyeong Korea is finding my family, and one way that I tied that in, the theme that I had, was words. A lot of time now that I've been studying Duolingo, I'm maybe about a 3-year-old as far as speaking the Korean language. But in my book, I wanted to relate to the reader, who I assume most of the time will be somebody who is either Korean American or doesn't know the Korean language. How does it feel to learn a new language, to discover things, to be able to relate to not just discovering words, but discovering culture, discovering identity, things that were deep in my heart, that I am from Korea. I am not just American, and I'm not just Korean, I'm Korean American. So when I tell my story, I'm telling it from that perspective, as well as the theme of learning some Korean words, which are Hangul, and learning that. And I've had presentations where I'm talking about Korea to some people who are from Korea, and it can be intimidating, but I'm Korean American, and I tell them that. And if I jack up a word, they can help me with that, but I try my best, so I am learning. So the theme or message of my book is learn about your culture. Yes, you're not going to get it perfect because you didn't grow up there, and so it's okay to be Korean American, to speak Kanglish. I don't know if that's a term, but to speak that way, to know that you don't have all of the same characteristics that somebody has that would grow up in Korea, but you're learning, and it's fun to learn, and that's what I hope that people get from the theme of my message in my book. So tip number 5 is just write, just start. A lot of people tell me I want to do this, and I've revisited this theme a lot of times, but people want to do it. There's just a fear. Sometimes we say, well, we'll make time for it, but we don't actually do it. And my encouragement to you is write. There's a lot of ways to do that. You can have an accountability buddy, somebody else who wants to write a book, and say, how are you doing with that book? Have a schedule. I'm sure I'm going to have a video about how YouTube has helped me because I need to get a video out once a week. And that sounds so easy when you're not behind the camera or editing. Actually, filming is not the hardest thing. Editing takes so long, but also the ideas. And so if I'm filming, if I'm uploading a YouTube video once a week, that's 52 videos. And I need to do that, and I need a schedule so that I can keep on top of it, so I can keep with my schedule. So the same thing, if you want to write a children's book, have a schedule, have a time, even if it's 5 minutes a day, maybe on your lunch break before you get your food out. You tell yourself, I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes and I'm going to write. I've shared my other videos. A friend of mine, his name is Ernie, he committed to writing 1 page a day, 1 page, and he eventually got to, I think his book is like 500 pages, and he wrote it, and he took the time, and it was just these little tiny increments. So in your mind you can think, this is a post-it note thing that I'm doing that will eventually become this wonderfully big thing. A book that you've written that's actually in book form for other people to be able to see. I say that because I came from a place of fear for years about not publishing, about things needing to be perfect. My encouragement to you in this series, but especially the first one, is to just write. Like the Nike swoosh. Just do it. Just write. Just start. Even if it's a commitment of 5 minutes, I don't know, a couple times a week, maybe it's just once a week, you can just spend 5 minutes. It's something that will get you to your goal. Now that you have the tools to start creating your story, it's time. Put that pen to paper, put the fingers to the keyboard. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next step in the process, because I will be sharing with you 4 more videos, and I hope that you will share what you've been doing. So again, in the comments, I love your comments. Give me some more comments about what you're doing, about what you're going to write about. Get excited, share it with others, and keep creating. Thank you guys for stopping by, and I will see you in video number 2 in this series. All right, bye.